Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Lamanda Weston. I am the Family Consumer Science Extension Agent for UT Extension in Greene County, Tennessee. So for those of you who are joining me from another state, welcome. So this is part 3 of the Mediterranean Style of Eating series. So if you were in my previous 2 sessions, welcome back. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. As always, these sessions are being recorded, so if you didn't get a chance to join us for the previous sessions, all the sessions in the whole series will be uploaded to my YouTube channel the first week in November. So there's always that option. So we're going to get started tonight, and the first topic we're going to kind of go through and talk about is our fish and seafood section here. And as we mentioned previously in the last 2 sessions, we know that fish and seafood is a very big staple if you're considering trying the Mediterranean way of eating. Okay, so this is an eating pattern, and we're going to go through the same kind of objectives that we have for the previous sessions. And we know that there are 5 common eating patterns as we go throughout the Mediterranean region here, and that's an emphasis on fruits and vegetables, beans and lentils, the whole grain, seafood and meats, okay, and the use of olive oils and different nuts. So we know those are staple common patterns that are throughout this eating pattern. Here are our objectives here. Okay, so these are the objectives we're going to focus on tonight as far as what are the health benefits of eating and incorporating more fish and seafood into your diet. Mercury contents, a lot of people are concerned about eating too much seafood that has a high content of mercury in it. Buying and storing and preparing the fish. Okay, I know a lot of people will say, well, I have it home, now how do I prepare it in the most simplest way possible? Because, most of us want very quick and easy ways to prepare foods, and seafood is probably no different. Okay, we saw this Mediterranean diet pyramid in our previous sessions as well, and now we're focusing right here in this middle section where the fish and seafood is, and you can see that that's a big part of this diet. Okay, the main source of protein is in this section here. So fish and seafood are consumed at least twice a week, usually, if you're trying this way of eating. This is probably one of the biggest components that some people will face when it comes to trying this way of eating, because if they have a severe allergy to any kind of seafood, then that's a big component that's kind of taken out of their diet for this. All right, so what are some health benefits? We've talked about health benefits as far as the overall pattern and the way of eating on this type of diet, but what specifically are our health benefits when it comes to incorporating seafood? So we know it's low in calories. Okay, we know that there are several health benefits associated with eating seafood. Low in saturated fat. It's rich in those omega-3 fatty acids that I'm sure most of our healthcare professionals tell us to get in. It's a good source of that protein. It has a lot of our vitamins like B12 and vitamin D in it. Okay, and it also has our minerals, our iron, zinc, and iodine. They're very high in those. So those are some health benefits we're going to talk about. So these are our fatty fishes. Okay, and fatty fishes are the ones that are high in the omega-3 fatty acids. Okay, and you may hear from nutritionists or medical care professionals saying to eat more fatty fish because of that reason. So we're referring to fish that has more oil in their tissues is how they get that kind of reference. So the mackerel, the salmon, all those you see listed here. Okay, and then the omega-3 fatty acids, if I can get that out, have been shown to benefit our heart. Okay, a lot of people will take it in a supplement form, pill form sometimes, and those that are high at risk of or have high chances of developing cardiovascular disease. Okay, so research has shown that anyone who consumes seafood a couple times a week lowers your risk of having like arrhythmias, okay, irregular heartbeats, that kind of deal. And it also decreases your triglyceride levels. So that's stuff that's like plaque that can grow around the outer layers of your heart. So all that is a good way of just naturally benefiting your health, okay, without taking any kind of supplements or pills or anything of that nature, just getting it out of your food. So on this particular way of eating, there are some fishes that, have been said to avoid, um, because they're considered unsafe. And people do eat them. Okay. We're not going to say that there's people out here not eating these, but our recommendation is to not consume them because they tend to be higher in mercury. So a lot of these here, you see that you could probably find most of these in certain areas of our country, I'm sure. No problem, of course. But and there'll be restaurants that serve them. There'll be all kind of recipes out there where you can make them, that kind of thing. But we want you to be safe in what you're consuming and know that these are the ones that are listed for high mercury content. So large fish that eat smaller fish typically have more mercury than others, which is what these are. So pregnant women, any women who are breastfeeding, young children should avoid these types of fish. Mercury can severely damage many parts of the body, including our lungs and kidneys, okay, and our nervous system that's in our brain, our spinal cord, and that kind of deal. So it can also cause hearing and vision problems if consumed too much, okay. For those pregnant women who are wanting their seafood and they try these or they consume a good amount of these, the babies could be exposed to mercury in the womb and have brain damage and vision and hearing problems as well. All right. So here are some of the best choices. Okay. And you see the first one there is a staple here in the South. Catfish is and I'm not going to say that, most of us here don't really grill our catfish, and that's not what we're known for. Usually, if you hear the word catfish, fried goes in the front of that word. But we're going to talk about preparation here in a minute. But these are the best choices in terms of getting the most nutrients out of your food. So if you're trying this diet and you say, hey, I love catfish, probably shouldn't fry it if I'm trying to watch my calorie intake and lower my cholesterol levels. But hey, I still like the taste of it. There are other ways to prepare it, of course. So we're going to talk about that, how to just change some of your modifications for some of your favorite foods. So again, 2 to 3 times a week, we're eating the best choice of fish we can find here. And when it says etc. here, it's because a lot of times you can substitute for different types of fish, and we're going to talk about that. And then here I give you a little website to go to, the FDA website, and they have a little nifty handout that you can print out or download. And it gives you right there on the little sheet, best choices and choices to avoid as far as seafood. And I think they give you a few more options as well on their list. So that's just a resource you can have to go to and look at your own convenience. And I'm going to show it to you here. And this is kind of what it looks like here. They may have updated a couple things, but this is the general visual of what it looks like here. So they do give you a good list here of ones you can eat that are best choices versus choices to avoid. Maybe ones that you can eat one serving a week because they may be a little fattier than these here on the left. So, all right. So you know that you're going to incorporate this into your diet. So now you're at the store or the fish market, wherever you're buying your seafood. And now we need to know how to buy it. Because a lot of times when you go and get seafood, I myself am guilty of this. I'm very particular about my seafood. When you go into the store and you see it sitting in little containers, and it doesn't look that appealing sometimes. It looks like it's been sitting out a while. It looks like it's changing colors. It may have odor coming from the seafood section. So those are things that we're going to talk about. So does it look fresh? Always go by what your eyes see first, okay? Whole fish should have the scales still on them, should have clear eyes. They should have bright red gills if you're buying the fish whole with the heads attached. Okay, if you buy those type of fish and they have bloodshot eyes and anything of that nature, that means that's early signs of spoilage. So we don't want to buy that. Fillets and steaks should also look shiny, and they should look fresh and moist. You could always, if you're buying out of a seafood department and they have it behind the counter, you can always, I don't know the situation right now being COVID times, but before COVID, you could always ask them, hey, can I see that? Can you give me a piece so I can examine it and look over it, smell it, all that kind of thing. May not be able to do that right now, but they may be give you a workaround if you want to examine it a little better. You can smell it, of course. The next one is our noses. Fresh fish should not have a fishy aroma. Okay, it may smell a little briny to where it's been brimed in something, but it should not have a fishy aroma to it. It should not have any ammonia smell to it. I've had some seafood that I've purchased where you get it home and it has a very strong ammonia smell. So that is a bad sign. You can poke it if you can. Like I have it there in parentheses now. Like I said, during our times now, you may not be able to examine as close as you might want to, but if it's something that you know for sure you're going to purchase, then they may let you do it. But that's something that you could do pre-COVID times, and that's just to examine it, because most fresh fish, if you poke it and it leaves an indentation, okay, that's a bad sign. That means that spoilage is near. Okay, it's supposed to bounce back. So that's the reason for touching it and poking it and that kind of thing. So because Tennessee here is not near an ocean, so many of our fish is probably frozen before you purchase it at the store or that kind of thing. Fresh fish and fillets are usually sold as previously frozen on the package. So they may not have all the characteristics of fresh fish. So, but you can still tell if it's rancid or if it's going bad, you know, when it starts thawing out. So you still can observe it that way. All right, so buying fresh shellfish, okay? So when it comes to shellfish, like shrimp and scallops, lobsters, you're looking for the flesh on it to be clear in color, like pearl-like, okay? That's the color we're looking for. So if it has any type of labels on this type of shellfish, it should have tags on it of the containers that it's in, especially if it's live shellfish in the shell. Okay, the container should be labeled, okay, or any kind of packaging that it comes in has details on it, contain the specific information about where the products come from, the processor certification number, and all that, because what that tells you is that they have followed those national safety controls that is needed when it comes to buying shellfish. So you want to make sure if you're buying from a live tank or anything like that, it should have it right on the side of it. If it doesn't, you should always ask the manager or one of the people who work there at their establishment to get that information for you. Okay, they should actually have that where all consumers can see it for themselves. But if it's not posted, you should definitely ask for it. Disregard any cracked or broken ones. If you get shellfish, like clams or oysters, they should not be broken. Okay, if the shells are cracked or broken, that's not a good sign. We do something called what we call a tap test when it comes to those kind of things. If you have live clams and oysters and mussels, they actually will close when the shell is tapped. Okay. If they don't close when tapped, do not select them or buy them. Okay. That's telling you that something's not right. They're not that fresh. They're about to go bad. So that's what we call the tap test. Now, again, this is all information that we had pre-COVID times. So you may have to do some workarounds as far as safety protocols now, what they're willing to let you do. So always just talk to the people who you're buying your product from and see what they're able to do to make sure you're getting the freshest product you can. Check for leg movement. If you're buying live crabs and lobsters, okay, they should have leg movement. Okay, if you're at a live tank and you're trying to buy something like that and you don't see any movement on those crabs or lobsters, that's not a good sign. Okay, they spoil very quickly after death, so we want to make sure that live crab and lobsters should be selected only. All right, so we've talked about buying fresh. Now we're going to step on into frozen. And there's nothing wrong with frozen. I don't want people to think, I know there's some stigma that goes around and say that, you know, buying seafood frozen is not that great. It absolutely can be great. I buy frozen seafood when needed as well. It's great if it's in your budget. Okay, sometimes you have to, depending on the area you live in. Like here in Tennessee, we can't really just go get the freshest of seafood. We have to kind of make do what we have. So the things you want to look for here is checking your packaging. Okay, don't buy frozen seafood. The package is open, torn. if you buy a bag of fish or something like that, and the ends of it are have been crushed, where something you see like something's been laying on it or it's been sitting on it, don't buy that bag. Okay, that's a safety protocol as well. Don't buy that. Avoid packages with signs of frost or ice crystals. Okay. Avoid packages where the frozen fish flesh is not hard. So if you go in the frozen section and you buy a bag of tilapia or whatever it is, and you sitting there and you're tapping on it and it's soft, okay, that's not a good sign. For one, that means it could have been a restocked item to where it's been sitting out where somebody didn't want it originally and they restocked it back into the freezer and it has not rethawed. I'm sorry, refrozen. So it's been sitting there soft all the time. So that's a food safety issue. We don't want to buy that. So just be sure that you do your due diligence and check it all out before you go and purchase it. All right, so you may find that some of the fish in a traditional Mediterranean, dishes are more difficult to find and sometimes in the U.S. Especially if you live in a very rural area where you don't really have access to a lot of grocery stores or a lot of fresh seafood, it could be an issue. So it is okay to substitute. So I have a little list here, okay, where you can substitute for different ones. And I also have resources I'm going to give you where there's a couple more substitutions you can make as well. But these are pretty common fish sources that most states will have and most cities will have that you can substitute for. Because I don't even think we have hake here. I personally have not. I have never seen hake here, so I would have to substitute for cod. I do know we can reasonably find cod here, so that's just one of those things of where you're located. All right, so what's the difference between wild caught versus farm raised? So you may have heard, some of the advantages of eating wild caught seafood versus farm raised and that kind of thing. Wild caught seafood is caught from its natural habitat, okay, just in the lake or ocean or the river, wherever you catch it. Whereas seafood is raised in large tanks when it's farm raised. So the nutritional quality of the seafood largely depends on what the fish eats if you're getting wild caught fish. So fish in the wild eats a natural diet, okay, and they tend to be slightly lower in saturated fat than the farm raised version. So the farm raised version can be slightly higher in those omega-3 fatty acids because it's being fed what we call fortified food, which means that nutrients are being added to it. Is what fortified is, okay? So we've shown some studies that show that farm raised varieties can be higher in contaminants. So farm raised fish tends to have a higher incidence of disease due to farming conditions sometimes. So we have to be careful of that. It's important to note that mercury can be found in both. So it's not just subjected to one. Wild caught seafood is typically higher in price than farm raised options. So frozen or canned can be more budget friendly than fresh varieties. Like we said, neither one is either better. It's all in what you can afford. It's all in what you can find. So you really have to work with what your best options are. All right, so now we're going to kind of move into some of the taste of things and how you prepare them pretty much. So if you prefer a fish that has a very light, less fishy taste to it, very delicate. The white flesh fish is what we call these. That's listed here. So they're very flaky and tender. They tend to be leaner than a lot of the other ones. So I know a lot of people, when they say they're watching what they eat and that kind of thing, will go straight to a tilapia because that's what tilapia is known for, is to be very lean and a very light fish. And it's really for people. This list is really for people. If you do not like that fishy taste, this list is for you. So be wary of that if you're out in the store and you say, hey, I want to try. If you've had catfish and you go and switch over to tilapia thinking they're going to taste the same, they will not. So some of the fishes are a little bit more aromatic, I guess you could say, in flavor and taste than some of the others. So this list is our moderate list. So this is where they start to get a little bit more flavorful here as far as the fish taste goes. You see the ones that we heard, catfish is listed there, trout's listed there. A lot of these are very popular. Okay, most of these I think we can find here in Tennessee very easily. So the ones here that these are have a little bit more fat to them. They're still good choices. Okay, the flavor is going to definitely be stronger. And how you prepare these and any of the fishes that we talked about will bring out the flavors even more. So if like I said, we're going to talk about preparation, but if you choose catfish and you decide to bake it or put it on the grill, okay, that fish is going to have a fishy taste to it, but depending on the preparation method you use, you may be able to lower it a little bit or increase it. So we're going to talk about that. So these are the ones that have a very strong fish taste to them. There's no way around it. Okay, I think most people have tried tuna and recognize that when you're eating tuna, it's definitely tuna. It has that taste and texture to it. Sea bass is probably the second most popular one that people can recognize as far as taste. Bluefish and then the Spanish mackerel. So if you go to a restaurant and you see these on the menu, just realize they will have a very strong fish smell and taste to them. And depending on how they prepare them in a restaurant or something of that nature, they could diet down a little bit, but not very much. All right. So now we're moving into storage. So we know that storing seafood is probably the most important thing after you purchase it. Okay. How you decide to store it until you're ready to prepare it is crucial. So storing fish and shellfish is in a cold temperature is what we're looking for here. So if you plan on using your fish in the next 2 days after you purchase it from the store and keep it in the refrigerator, that's fine. But I would recommend that you put it in like some type of ice bath, like what you see here, because the colder the better. We don't want the fish to get room temperature. We don't want it to change too much temperature at all, rather than cold, cold, cold. Okay. If you do not plan on using it within 2 days, that's when you need to look at your other options of freezing, maybe. Okay, because we don't want it sitting out any longer than that. Seafood goes rancid very quickly, and so if it's not kept at that cool temperature, and depending on how much of this you've purchased or anything of that nature, you don't want it to go bad and you've just wasted your money and all that kind of thing on your seafood. So we want to try to preserve it as much as we can. So when you're talking about serving it, these are just some options here. But in the Mediterranean diet, a lot of times you'll find recipes where you're using your fish as a starter or appetizer. So that's very common. So if you have a cookbook or you're going through some kind of guide where you're following this type of diet, just know that some recipes may use this as, and say, fish as an appetizer or starter. But you can also, of course, use this any other entree as well. All right, so we're cooking fish and seafood until it reaches an internal temperature of 145 degrees. Okay, you can use a thermometer. I actually recommend you do. But we're looking for visually, we're looking for the flesh to be clear and it separates easily with a fork. That's how you pretty much know it's done. So for anyone who's ever cooked salmon, you should know it does not take long at all. If you're cooking any type of seafood on top of your stove, it does not take long at all to cook that. So you want to make sure that you're actually at the stove watching it so it doesn't burn easily, because it doesn't take long. Any kind of shrimp, lobster, crab, if you have scallops, okay, should be cooked as well until the flesh is pearly white. Cooking clams, oysters, and mussels until the shells open. That's how you know those are ready. So the dry heat cooking methods for seafood, these are some here: broiling and grilling. And I give you some examples of the fishes that kind of work best with that. Doesn't mean you can't try the others, of course. But any type of fish can be broiled or grilled. But oily fish, the salmon and trout, do well when it comes to the broiling and grilling. They just kind of stand up well better to the process because they have a lot of fat in them, the good type of fat. So all fish should be brushed lightly with some type of butter or oil, and then before being placed on the grill under the broiler. So you don't have to batter it down like you would if you were frying it. Okay, you don't have to put that much oil and butter on it. We're just trying to get enough on there so it doesn't stick to the grill or to the pan or things of that nature. So most fish does well with just salt and pepper, because you have to remember, as many herbs and spices. Remember we talked about those. The Mediterranean diet is very simplistic in the way it prepares food, so you don't have to put a lot of stuff on your foods to eat it, to enjoy it. So salt and pepper, a little bit of butter on it is usually how most of the food is, or the fish is processed or prepared as far as broiling and grilling. So you typically serve like a lemon wedge with it. You can put a sauce with it if you like, but like here in the picture, that's pretty simple of how they serve it when you're talking about Mediterranean style of eating here. So cook fish and seafood, like we said, 145 degrees. Shrimp, lobster, crabs, of course, same thing, making sure that the flesh is like a pearly white color. That's how you know it's done. And then, of course, anything with a shell on it, making sure the shell pops open. That's how you know it's done cooking. Okay. So another way to prepare fish is baking. And I know some people I've heard from um, in some of my other classes over the years, when we talk about baking seafood, it's not their favorite. Because a lot of times most people are switching over their palates from fried seafood to baking or roasting or grilling, so they're having to adjust their palate a little bit on what to expect. So when it comes to baking, okay, it will be different as far as texture. You can get a crunchiness to it. It's just how and all you prepare it. So if you're wanting to roast fish, you most definitely can. And the best way to do that is to get you a roasted pan where the juices and the fats will drip down into a pan, and the food is actually sitting up on the tray, so it's not directly laying in the juices. So that's how you get like a sogginess to anything that you're baking. So you're just going to raise it up a little bit so it cooks from underneath and gives you a nice crispy outside texture to it. So fatty fish works best for this. Okay. Um, Brush with butter or oil again, as you can see there. We even give you some mashed potatoes there to go with it, so you can have some of those comfort foods that we're used to having, most definitely in moderation. All right, so sauteing fish. Okay, so we talked about grilling, broiling, baking, and roasting. So fish absolutely can be sauteed on top of the stove. It's actually a healthier alternative to frying. This method helps the outside of the fish to caramelize. Sometimes baked fish is sauteed before baking to get that caramelization as well. But as you can see there, there's no breading on it. It's not deep fried. It's sauteed. Okay. There's not enough oil in there to deep fry or what we consider pan fry. All right. So our moist heat methods. So when steamed, fish is what we call suspended over a small amount of water or some kind of liquid in a covered pan. So you're actually steaming your fish. You're not baking it. You're not sauteing it. It's actually the steam is actually cooking it. And then poaching. Okay, the fish is submerged in some type of liquid, usually water sometimes, but you can do it in other liquids as well, and completely covered. Okay, so poaching is something to where most people will poach in what you call those little things. Sometimes people poach in, you can poach in foil if you want to, but it's like a food grade bag that you can buy that you can just sit over in your pot of water and you can poach things in it. The name of them have escaped me. If somebody knows them, please tell me that. But there's this food grade bag because it's food grade, which means it's safe to go around foods and you're cooking in them, you're going to eat it. So you can look for those as well. But that was on the tip of my head too until I talk about it. All right, the fish is placed on a bed of vegetables, so enough liquid to come halfway up and the liquid is simmered. So this is what we call shallow poaching. Okay, so steamed and poached fish goes well with any type of sauce you want to prepare. Let's see, did somebody tell me? I don't know, Robin. Robin, send your comment to everyone in the group. You sent it to just me. if you scroll down in the chat box where it says to everyone and click on that, make sure that's clicked. That way everybody can see yours. I don't think that's what I was thinking of though. Let's see. It may come to me here in a minute. All right, so we're gonna finish talking about fish up here, about sushi, because it does come up. I know a lot of people enjoy sushi. More power to you. I have not acquired a taste for it quite yet. But sushi is safe to eat. It can be incorporated into this eating lifestyle, but there are some things to consider. So traditional Japanese sushi is made with what we call vinegar rice and includes raw fish, and it's usually on top of rice or rolled in rice and seaweed. So eating raw or undercooked seafood is always risky, no matter, if you're buying it from a store or restaurant or you're making it at home. You just have to be very careful about the conditions you're buying it in. Because of this, the FDA requires that most fish, usually commercially for sushi, be frozen to kill parasites. So there are some guidelines that people who make sushi have to follow to produce it. But we want to make sure that if you're incorporating this, you're just following all the safety guidelines. So if you're buying it from a supermarket, making sure that you trust that particular establishment, what they're selling. You buy takeout sushi only from clean establishments, reputable establishments. Making sure that if you're buying it, it's kept in a refrigerated area. It's not just sitting out in the middle of the store, not refrigerated or cooled. That's a bad sign. Do not buy it. Okay. If you're buying it from a restaurant, okay, they generally will have to follow those guidelines as well, so that may be more on the safer side there. But if you're pregnant or anything of that nature, or you have young children, we don't want them to kind of consume it because they have compromised immune systems at that point. So it's best to avoid sushi and just eat any seafood cooked. Okay, but it is a good option because it's a good source of those omega fatty acids, the proteins, the nutrients. It's low in calories. However, because it may have seaweed and it uses soy sauces and pickled ginger and all these other kind of ingredients that are high in sodium, we may have to watch that because many may have between 400 and 800 milligrams of sodium. Okay, some even go over 1,000 milligrams depending on what's in it. So you could always ask the people if you go to a restaurant and get this, what's in it, of course, for the ingredients list. The ingredients list should be on the back of the box or container if you're buying it at the store, with the nutritional label attached to it. So it's very easy to read it there. But yeah, absolutely. If you enjoy sushi, you can include it in this diet. So this is just some of the basics here, just to kind of sum up here. Butter, lemon, salt, and pepper. Remember, it's the simplest way to season seafood. So you don't have to go out and buy all these fancy seafood spices and herbs, or if you find a recipe you want to try and it's got 20 different spices listed and you don't want to invest that much in it, you can always just start with these 4 and go from there. Okay. And just use what you have on hand and experiment with it. Like I've told you all in previous sessions, I'm a big firm believer in experimenting with different spices and herbs because they can't hurt you as far as calorie intake and anything of that nature. Just be easy on the salt. Is the only thing I would put in my little disclaimer there. But other than that, feel free to experiment with whatever spices you have. But I will also give you a resource of different spices that pairs well with different foods. Because I know sometimes people want to know, oh, I saw this in the store. What does this go well with? Like tarragon. It's a spice that I know of and that a lot of people probably use, but some people are like, oh, I don't know what that goes with. So we created a little list here for you to have, so you can just go to and say, hey, oh, that pairs well with poultry, okay, which tarragon does. So a healthy alternative that is popular in the Mediterranean style of eating is to use some olive oil. You could always incorporate that and saute it in olive oil, and then of course just some easy veggies over it, and you're good to go. So this is like your little staple section right here. So we've talked about different types of seafood, fish, and how it's an important part of this Mediterranean style of eating. And because fresh seafood is sometimes very abundant for some people, but not so much for others, depending on where we live, it's okay to buy frozen seafood. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's a healthy option because of all the nutrients that we get from it, all the protein we're getting from the seafood, less calories as far as how we're preparing it. Okay. So don't say that Amanda said you can have fried catfish on the Mediterranean diet. I did not say that. Uh, but how you prepare it is also one of the key points of this diet. So it's best to avoid large fish. They may have large amounts of mercury, so keep that in mind. But just be choosy about what you're buying as far as any type of seafood, because seafood is very expensive. And depending on how much of it you're buying at a time, it would break my heart for you if you didn't store it right or didn't um, buy the right kind out of the store because it was already going bad before you bought it. So please just keep an eye on that. All right. So that is our seafood section. Are there any questions before we move on to our next one?
LaManda, this is Linda. I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go into the store, and I should probably know this, right?
You're an expert, Linda.
I am not an expert. So you go into the store, like to the grocery store, and they have the seafood or the fish, and they tell you it's been previously frozen.
Mm-hmm.
So then, do we recommend that you can freeze that again, or should that be prepared without being frozen?
No, you can still go home and refreeze it. They just have to put on there previously frozen because they don't want people assuming that it's fresh.
Okay.
That's just a marketing thing.
I couldn't remember. I knew I should know that, but that was just, it wasn't coming to my brain, and I thought I need to ask that. So it's okay to go ahead and freeze it.
Yeah, and I think they use that only for areas where they know we don't get fresh seafood, like Tennessee.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you, LaManda.
Uh-huh. All right. Any more questions before we move on to our next section? All right. I don't have many of you all on here tonight, but that's okay.
I was going to say one other thing. I didn't realize orange roughy, because that's what I really like, was high in mercury. I learned that tonight, unfortunately for me, I guess.
All right, so we're going to move along to our next part. Okay, so we talked about seafood. Now we're moving on to beans and peas here. All right, and we're going to skip that slide because it's pretty much the same thing we've already been over. So we're just going to go right into our objectives here. So this is what we're going to talk about tonight. Okay, so we know that, again, this is a big part of our diet as well. If you're doing this Mediterranean style eating here. So the nutrient content of beans and peas. Okay, we're going to talk about different types of beans and peas and course preparation and ways to incorporate them into a healthy meal plan. Our main focus right now. All right, so we got beans and peas. Okay, so we're right here in the biggest section of our pyramid. Okay. So even if you cannot incorporate seafood into your diet, if you can get anything in this little section here, I think you're good to go. Okay, this is where a majority of your nutrients are coming from. All right, so beans and peas are just a subgroup of different vegetables. Okay, so they're an important part of a healthy diet, but because of their unique nutrient profile, they're considered both a vegetable and a protein food for meal planning. So here are a list of beans. Okay, and most of us are very familiar with these different types here. They're very traditional in this Mediterranean diet. You're going to see these in a lot of recipes that you pull up. Other common beans and peas, like the navy beans, pinto beans, all that kind of thing, are very popular here in Tennessee, but they can be easily incorporated into the diet. So if you can't find some of these others, like fava beans, I personally have never seen those unless I think I've seen them one time if I go to a specialty store, but it's not something that's easily accessible if you just run to your local store, probably. So you can always substitute some of these other familiar ones. All right, so beans and peas. Go back. One too far. My screen's doing that freezing thing again. Hope it's not gonna start acting up on me. All right, so beans and peas and lentils can be served as main meals. They don't have to be side dishes or incorporated into like a salad or stew if you don't want to. Or they can be spread. Some people would make them into like the hummus and a white bean spread, like a falafel here on the right, and which is made from like a chickpeas is one example of the popular dish made from beans and peas. Okay, so that's what those are. So beans and peas are a nutrient dense food. That means that they're packed full of nutrients, okay, but they're naturally low in calories. So there's no added fats or sugars in them. Beans and peas are an important source of protein. So anyone who's a vegetarian, they probably incorporate a lot of these into their everyday diet. But because beans and peas contain so many nutrients, it's recommended that everyone include these, okay, for the reasons that's on the screen. If you're having any kind of deficiency in any of these nutrients, a lot of times a nutritionist or dietitian will tell you to increase your bean and peas intake for this reason, because it's the quickest way to get that in. Of course, you can always take supplements if needed, but most nutritionists and dietitians will tell you the quickest way to get your nutrients in is through your foods. Okay. All right. So plant protein. So that's what beans and peas are. So they're a protein from plant foods, and are especially important for people following, like we said, vegetarian patterns. Okay, a half a cup serving of dried beans is about 7 to 8 grams of protein. So not only are beans an important source of protein, they're also an important source of amino acids, okay, like lysine there. That's one of our amino acids. So we get that from foods because our body's unable to make it. So if you are doing like an annual physical and blood work, that kind of thing, and your doctor says, hey, you got some deficiencies in certain areas here, and the lysine one comes up, that's what that is. So beans are the best plant source to get that from. And of course, fiber. I think most of us know that beans are a good source of fiber. A nutrient that many people in America need to eat more of, actually, from what's been recommended. So you have a half a cup of dried beans, contains about 5 to 8 grams of total fiber. And then the beans are also a good source of soluble fiber. So eating foods high in soluble fiber may help lower your cholesterol levels. And then a half a cup serving of beans contains about 1 or 2 grams of soluble fiber. And if you think of a half a cup, okay, a half a cup of dried beans is not that much, you think, but you got to remember this is pre-cooked. So, beans are going to expand, so it'll give you a little bit more volume. All right, so polyphenols, okay, beans and peas contain these. So they're just another, what we call phytochemical. So think of it like antioxidants. That's what it says on the screen. That's all this is. So the color of the seed coat of the dried beans is usually due to the presence of polyphenols. So the dark colored beans are usually high in them. The light yellow beans are typically high in other nutrients. So research suggests that the content of dried beans plays a role in reducing the risk for chronic diseases like heart disease and cancer. So, we've all heard that saying is get as much variety in your plate as you can. So the same kind of context here. So if you're going to have beans and peas, you want to make sure that you're getting a different variety of colors, a different variety of nutrients. I know some, here in the South, we love our soup, beans, and cornbread. Okay, it's about that time of the year where most things that people are eating. So this is your chance to incorporate a lot of different ones in your pot. Just put some other different ones in there to try. If you have some maybe some hesitant people in your household that are just sticklers for that one type, you can just sneak a few in there and try and see what it tastes like. You don't have to add a lot. But that's a good way to kind of incorporate, is to try to see if you like trying some of these first before you spend a lot of money on it. So some health benefits, of course, reducing our cholesterol levels is always a great thing. Okay, reducing cholesterol levels reduces our chances of developing cardiovascular disease. Okay, or getting plaque around the arteries of our heart. So reducing the risk of diabetes. So these are all the things that we're striving for if you're trying to incorporate more of the beans and peas in your everyday diet. All right, and just with everything else we've talked about, there's not one that's better than the other here. Dried, canned, or frozen. Do what works best for your time and your budget always. So I tell people, I know it's okay if you want to try to get in as much of the dried, or if you want to avoid the can, and that's fine. But always do what works best for you, because there's always little ways we can get around and reducing some of the preservatives of sodium in can. The frozen is good as well. You lose a little bit of your nutrients when things get frozen, but not enough to where it should throw you off of buying frozen at all. So reducing your sodium. Okay, if you're choosing canned beans, it's fine. It saves on prep time, and who doesn't want to save time right now? It's great. They're often higher in sodium, but that's we can rectify that. Okay, all you have to do is drain and rinse them. Okay, at least drain them, at least rinse them 5 times to get all that extra sodium intake off there. By doing that, you're lowering the sodium intake by 36% at least. So a quick rinse a few times and you're good to go. Usually in beans, you got most of that out of there if the water when you're rinsing them and draining them is not cloudy anymore. So once the water goes clear, you're good to go. You're through rinsing them. So like I said, I don't want people to think that, oh, I have to buy them dry. They'll taste better and that kind of thing. As far as taste quality goes, I can't tell the difference. And like I said, do what works better for your time and your budget. So this is one of the 15.5 ounce cans here. So if you want to substitute canned beans and peas for dried and peas and beans in a recipe, you can. Okay, so that's what it's giving you here. It's just giving you a little estimation. So because they hold their shape well, canned beans are a good option to use in your salad dishes. They do require some sauteing though, if you want them to have a little bit of texture to them and have a little bit of flavor. Quick cooking in dishes like soup and stews are always good. I keep canned products in my cabinet at all times because it's just very simple. If I want to create a soup that morning or that day or some kind of stew, I can just easily drain them and pour them right in. So there's nothing, I don't want people to think that, there's something bad about it, because there's been a lot of negativity around buying canned products. And I want you to understand that there are ways we can make it healthier. There's ways that we can adjust, and that's fine. All right, so when choosing frozen peas or beans, look for the no salt added if you can, okay? Or low sodium varieties, they do have those now. I think they're starting to make them more in the frozen section now when it comes to low sodium. And compare the products for the least amount of sodium. There are certain brands, okay, I'm not gonna recommend a brand or anything, but there are certain brands, so when you're in the store, just compare the different ones, because depending on how they were manufactured, depending on what their preservatives are in that product, the sodium levels can greatly differ. Okay, I've seen some go from, up to from 500 milligrams sodium all the way up to 2,500 milligrams, and it's the same product, just different company, and they process it differently. So always compare shop before you actually decide on one. Okay, and just follow the package guidelines for preparing it if you want to. They make it very handy nowadays to warm up your vegetables. I mean, most of them are steamable. You can do it in the microwave. You can heat it very quickly on the stove. You can throw in with other types of food and cook with it. So there's a lot of different types out there that make it very simple for you. All right, so dried beans. So 1 pound dried beans equals 5 to 6 cups of cooked beans. Okay, so they're inexpensive. Okay, dried beans are very inexpensive, full of flavor. They do require some extra preparation. Now, dry beans are especially good for recipes that cook longer periods of time. So if you know you're going to be cooking a stew or a soup for several hours at a time, this is the time to pull those out of the cabinet and just drop those in because they're great at long cooking times. So through the process of cooking, the flavor of the dried beans builds over time and contributes to the overall dish. Now, this is a product of soaking overnight or a quick soak. Growing up, my mother skipped this step. We did not soak our beans. Okay. And I was not going to tell her otherwise that she was wrong in doing that. So she did her own thing. But we did not soak them. But it does to me, okay, now that I'm out on my own and I have my own house, I can say this now. It does to me make a difference when it comes to the taste and it comes to the quality of it. And it's something that, you know, if you do a little, you have to do a little prep time and remember to take them out and do this the night before you're actually ready to cook them. But other than that, there's very little, you know, setup to it. So you can begin by soaking beans for at least 4 hours or overnight in a bowl. Okay. So to prepare dry beans on the stove, begin by soaking beans for at least 4 hours, or you can soak them overnight in a bowl with room temperature water. Drain the beans, remove any debris or anything that's in there that you don't want in there, and then rinse with fresh water. So, but if you're in a rush, okay, you can always also use the quick soaking method by using boiling water instead of room temperature water. To do this, all you do is put your beans in a pot, cover the pot with water, and then bring the beans to a boil and continue to boil for about 2 minutes. Drain and rinse with cold water. So that's what we call a quick soak. So lentils, you cannot do not require soaking. Okay, so you don't need to soak lentils. The process of draining and rinsing the beans after soaking can help reduce some of the intestinal gas that may occur because remember, beans have a high fiber content. So if you get some intestinal discomfort from that, the soaking helps with that. So you soak them, okay? So now you're going to cover it with fresh water. This is just the process of soaking them. You will need about 6 cups of fresh water there in your pot for each pound of beans. Add a small amount of cooking oil, and what that does is prevent foaming. So if you're cooking your beans for several hours, like I usually do, you're going to get quite a bit of foam. So you only need like a 1/4 of a teaspoon of oil. Just toss it in the pot, and so it doesn't have all that foam at the top of your pot. You can add in your herbs and spices at this time or any other flavorings you want to add. Onion, garlic, parsley, thyme, all those pair very well. Okay. Let's see. If you don't have a pot that vents, just pop open your lid a little bit. Since this is going to be cooking for an extended period of time, we want to make sure you vent it. Okay. So the beans are not steaming. Okay. We don't want to steam them. And then avoid rapid boiling as this will cause the beans to break down. So do not cook on flame is what I tell people. Otherwise don't cook on high. So you want to make sure you're cooking them on a very steady boil, medium, if that's what your stove is. Mine still goes by numbers, so I'm usually between like a 4 and a 5 is a good cooking temperature for me. So wait until the end of the cooking to add like salt and anything that's acidic. So if you want to add like vinegar or tomatoes, add that at the very end, probably 5 or 10 minutes before you're getting ready to stop cooking the beans or something like that. Because if you add that in while it's still cooking at that rapid boil, kind of steady boil there, it's going to toughen up all that's in there. And we don't want that. Okay, we don't want anything tough in our pot. So just make sure you take consideration of that. All right, so here are some cooking times. And this is going to be on your resources too, so you don't have to worry about trying to write this down if you're trying to write down or anything. But these are just some general cooking times here. Now, I cook mine pretty much all day. Raised in a southern home, you know, if you cook your beans in 1 hour, they were not done. So my beans cook for at least 4 hours, and I cook mine on a very low temperature though, so it's a steady temperature. But feel free to follow these if you like. Let's see, Jennifer has a question. This is the cook time after soaking, correct? Yes. Yes, Jennifer. That's why I was saying that I usually cook mine a lot longer than this. But if you want to stick to these cooking times, absolutely you can. But cooking them longer at a lower temperature is okay as well. Because I know a lot of people do that. Because a lot of people will add in some type of protein and that kind of thing to their beans, so they're cooking that with it as well. All right, so people have asked me, can I use a multi-cooker, okay, to cook beans and that kind of thing? Yes, you absolutely can. The electric multi-cookers can be used to prepare dry beans and peas very quickly, so it's a good tool to have if you have one. But keep in mind that dry beans and peas will increase in volume as they cook. So I think the multi-cookers have a little stopping point inside the pot where you can't fill it up past a certain point. So you may have to do a little experimenting or adjusting with that to make sure that you accommodate for the volume when the beans start cooking. But you absolutely can, because you want to make sure that you're not voiding your warranty, or if you have warranty on it. But if your manual calls for a certain way to do it, you might want to follow that. But remember, don't put oil in here. You have to skip that step, because if you put cooking oil or anything in your cooker, it may clog up the valves in there, and we don't want to damage your cooker. So you might have to cook that, leave that step out if you're going to use your multi-cooker, okay, because it can block the valves. So cooking times vary depending on the type of multi-cooker you have. There are a few different varieties of multi-cookers out there. There are some little small ones, and there's like a 5-quart one, and there's like some huge ones out there. So depending on, like I said, your particular one, you may have to read your manual to go by specifics. I don't give anyone specific advice about their cooker and steer you wrong. But feel free to email me if you have specific questions, and I can take it kind of case by case of what to do there. So after your multi-cooker has reached the desired cooking time for best result, let the pressure release naturally. So almost just like pressure canning, we don't want to try to yank that lid off as soon as that timer goes off. Let it release naturally until it's done, and then you can open the lid. Okay, so keep in mind, although you may see recipes for dry beans and peas prepared in multi-cookers, the process of draining and soaking beans can help reduce, again, the intestinal gas that may occur from all the fiber that's in these. All right, and these are just some little ideas of more ways to incorporate beans and peas, because if you're like me, it's hard for me just to eat them by themselves. I kind of have to have something that they're mixed in with, or I'm eating with them. So this is a good slide for me. All right, so to kind of sum up here, we know that beans and peas are very affordable. They're probably the most affordable food we've talked about up until this point, as far as the style of eating goes. They're plant protein based. Feel free to choose canned, frozen, or dried. There's no better one. They're all great. Okay, we're getting our nutrients from them. They're a soluble fiber. They have a lot of health benefits as far as lowering our cholesterol levels and reducing our cardiovascular disease risk and that kind of deal. So there's a lot of different benefits to incorporating these in our diet. All right. Well, we just went through 2 sessions here. And so you all know what time it is. It's your time to open it up with questions you have. Like I said, I don't have many of you on here tonight, so you may not have that many questions, which is fine. Hi, Carissa. Let's see. I recently tried pasta made from chickpea. Would that be acceptable as a source? So you're actually making your pasta, like pasta noodles from chickpea. Is that what you're saying? You can clarify that a little bit better for me to make sure I know what you're asking. I'm purchasing it, but yes, it is made from chickpeas. Oh, okay, then yeah, absolutely. If you can think of creative ways to incorporate this stuff, go for it. Yeah, Carissa, I don't see any problem with that at all. Because if this is something you're planning on sticking to for an extended period of time, you're going to have to find different ways and creative ways to incorporate these foods because you're going to get bored. That's the number one reason people don't stick to a diet or a eating plan, because they get bored and they don't know how to keep preparing some of the foods they want to keep eating. So absolutely, get creative with it. All right, let's see. Yeah, Chris, I would say it's not the same as pasta. I would definitely say, yeah, chickpeas is a unique taste, and it does not have that same taste as pasta. But like again, it's one of those acquired tastes. If you eat it so much and you get used to it. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop the few resources in the chat box like I usually do, and I'm also gonna upload them on my Facebook page like I usually do. So if you cannot get them from here, do not worry. Okay, they'll be on Facebook. But I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna All right, on your screen, you should see a recipe for a black eyed pea salad. And just like with the previous resources, it's got the ingredients here for you. It's got directions, it's got tips and techniques. So if you want to substitute anything or try to use a pressure cooker method, slow cooker method, it's got that there for you. Okay, so that's one of your resources there. No, no problem. Hey, the quantity does not matter. We're gonna do it. All right. Get back to this one. So this is your second resource, rosemary spiced almonds. So this one actually would be a good holiday one. Yeah, that would actually be a good holiday one to try. But it gives you ways to toast them here. You toast in the oven or on the stove. How to incorporate sesame seeds. So those are a good source. And I'm going to drop these down in here. But I just wanted you all to see it. I like you all to see it first while I'm here. Something may have a question about something. Okay. And the balsamic white bean salad. And I have tried all of these. So most of the recipes or resources that I give you all, I personally have tried them or made them. So I'm a firm believer in experiencing it myself before I start telling people, oh yeah, these are great. And I am not a big vegetable person, so that should tell you all something if I like them. I try to eat as many vegetables as I can, but I'm very picky about them. I love green vegetables, but there's some of the others that are not my friend. So here's another resource for you. And I think it might be. All right, and I'm going to give you two resources on fish. Oh, Colette, you're pescatarian. That's so neat. I did a this year and last year actually was my first year doing a series on different eating lifestyles, and pescatarian was one. And people were blown away that was they had never heard of it. So um, it's really neat. I haven't met anyone that's a pescatarian. All right, so I'm going to share this. So this is a resource on sauteing fish. So this just gives you a general guideline here. Like I said, you can experiment with your different spices and ingredients if you like. Okay. This one is based on tilapia here, but you can choose any fish you want. How much you need here. So it gives you a little tip sheet here, how to saute, food safety tips on this side. So that's that one. And then I have one more to show you, and then I'm going to drop those in the chat box so you all can download them. For those of you who can download them. There it is. All right, so this is the Sicilian fish in foil. Okay, so it's giving you how to cook it in the oven in foil. So this is a handy one to have. And this one you can just use the basic and procedure of how to do it and mix and match all your different ingredients. This is a good one to kind of experiment with different fishes with. Okay, so you have that. Give me some other little tips down here on that one. Okay, so those are your resources. All right, so I'm going to drop these in the chat box. And again, for those of you who are having problems downloading them, don't worry, I'll put them on the Facebook page. Okay, so here they come. All right. One, two, three, lost count. One, two, three. Okay. One more. Or two more, sorry. Not a better way to store these because it's got them all out of order. All right. Anyone download those? Okay. Okay, great. Make sure I'm not missing any. Set up the saute fish. I'm missing the Sicilian. Give me a minute. Let me put that one. I know I got that. That's all of them. Okay, you all can download them. Okay, yeah. Yes, I will post them on the Facebook page for those of you who are on your phones or other devices and you can't download them. Okay, I did download them. Okay. All right. I thought I was missing one, but they're all there. All right, so you all have those. Are there any more questions you all can think of? I'm going to drop my email in the chat box again. So there it is. Feel free to email me with questions you think of between now and whenever. I'm always available for you all. And we may have had a small group, but that's okay. small but mighty. Okay. There is the last class is next week. We're going to do part 4 next week. Okay, part 4 is the nuts and seeds and olive oils. So that will be our last one that we're going to finish up with. That's okay, Sarah. I didn't even notice your video. If that makes you feel better. All right. Well, if that's all, I'm going to stop recording.